thewellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives.
Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, featuring your hosts Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. And today's podcast is sponsored by Charlie Martin Photography. You can find her online on Facebook and Instagram. She's the genius behind all of the photos that you see for our collaborators. And the woman, if you have ever come to my house, is the genius behind every single one of my kids' photos.
They are amazing. I just love them.
So if you're really after a family photo shoot, she does on-location shoots and gives you all of the photos on a digital, edited on a digital disc for you to do whatever you want with. So it ends up being, you know, incredibly cost-effective and beautiful presents. So please check her out online at charlie.martin.photography. I'm pretty sure it is on Facebook and Instagram.
And today's podcast is You Are the Creator of Your Reality. Now that is a massive statement and it's really loaded. And there's a part of me that's really uncomfortable about doing
this one. It's totally freaking you out, isn't it, Bridget? I'm like, oh, we'll just start the basics. And Bridget was like, oh my God, but I feel such profound responsibility.
So that's kind of where I'm coming from with this podcast. And I think it's loaded because I think for a lot of people, these concepts around the universe and life responding to you and all that stuff can be a little bit terrifying.
It's really confronting, actually, isn't it? Yeah.
And you just scratch the surface and what you think that you know, you kind of don't know, and you start to piece more parts of the puzzle together. And like, even last night, like I was doing some reading and I found this incredible like synchronicity between this first shameful in brackets kind of, you know, quasi-sexual experience when I was 6, right?
Yeah.
And the name of that boy was the same name as the boy of my first boyfriend who I lost my virginity to.
Oh my God.
Yeah, like, this is not what I was planning to say, right? But this totally just came up. And I was like, oh my God, like, because there's no mistakes in that.
Blew your mind with the synchronicity.
It blew my mind.
Yeah.
Like,
so what does universal synchronicity say to you?
Well, I mean, synchronicity is a term that was, I don't know if it was coined by Carl Jung, but it was like the founder of psychology really came up with that idea. And it's that idea that in the exact moment that you are perceiving something, there is the exact opposite or somehow linked thing happening that you can't explain. It's kind of like a coincidence, but it's too profound to be a coincidence.
Yeah.
That's kind of my take on it. And I mean, synchronicity happens in time, like, and space at the same time, but also when you can go back and look at like things like I've just explained, you know, things happening 10 years apart really, which is what that would have been. Like, that's just weird, right? Like, you just go, that's just weird. But it was almost part of my own learning and growth and healing and connecting together the parts of myself that I disowned, you know? What does it mean to you? How would you explain it?
I really like that. No, well, synchronicity for me is much, much more shallow, actually, Bridget, so I'm fascinated to pull that apart. Synchronicity for me, I kind of look at almost like the law of attraction or the law of abundance, is when all of a sudden these things start to align, or I'm thinking and pondering a question and all of a sudden the answer starts popping up in the people around me or the conversations that I'm having, or I feel like it's almost a path that it's like a little twinkle that goes, yes, you're here. This is kind of where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
I almost feel like it's a path of connection that I feel the more that coincidence in inverted commas or synchronicity occurs, the closer I am to where I need to be.
Yeah. And the thing with that one is that you'll perceive, it's funny because our perceptions are driven by our values. So if you're valuing a certain thing, then you're going to be looking for things to confirm what you're valuing. So depending on...
Just saying it's not true.
No, but it's all driven by what we're wanting to perceive, because there's a whole lot of stuff in the world around us, but we cannot simply, like, our brains cannot simply like process everything that we see. So we choose... not intentionally, we choose to see certain aspects. So,
which is perfect. So I actually think this is the place we should start from this. Now, this has come out of when we got feedback on our survey. There was a lot of, we really love the universal principles stuff from our listeners, but we need some more depth and grounding in them. So that's why we thought we would start here, because this is what underpins every single other decision you make in your life and every single other universal law and every principle that we talk about in living an awakened life within your genius. This is kind of the law that underpins all of those.
Yeah.
So I think that you've touched on perception is perfect. Do you think we could start there?
Yeah, we can start there, definitely. Yeah, and I mean, I think that when we're talking about laws, the one that the people know the most of is the law of attraction.
Yes.
And what you're talking about in terms of those things lining up is largely that.
Yes.
Yeah,
so which is The Secret? So if anyone's read The Secret that went ballistic and Oprah loved and all of this jazz is essentially talking to the one of the 7 laws, the law of attraction.
Yeah.
And so even in that book, she talks about you being a master manifester. And so lots of people love this concept of affirmation and manifestation.
Yes.
That when you put enough energy and intent into a thing, you can essentially create it as part of your future reality.
Yeah, and that's absolutely true. And like that's something that is in a lot of the learning that I've been doing is just the power of that. And particularly when you're on the cusp of something or you're in a tricky point, like I mean, even particular affirmations that are balanced, that are not kind of like lofty, I am always going to be joyful and loving and never raise my voice. That's ridiculous. You can't do that. It's about choosing really balanced ones. So, for example, I listen to the wisdom of my soul and I take inspired action. You know, so that is constantly reminding yourself, okay, what's my path here? Like, what? It's a way to cultivate your intuition, and to use an affirmation like that really, really regularly can help you to drown out some of the outer world's feedback to help you get more congruent with what your inner world's saying.
And also that listening to your soul is not about living in this utopian ideal of bliss and harmony, that listening to your soul is as much walking into the challenges knowing that there's gold here for you to mine, as it is loving the ecstasy of the joy that you experience.
And I think, you know, any discussion around this idea of you're the creator of your reality and these concepts of the universe and being in alignment also has to have some grounding in the fact that despite what some new age stuff will say, life isn't supposed to be easy. It's not supposed to be always in flow because we grow through challenge.
We don't ever grow through the easy.
No.
If you're just la 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 happy, do you think you're ever going to dive deep or make big changes?
No.
No.
Not at all. And the more you try to make things easy and conflict free and try to disown the chaos, the more you're going to create it.
Yes.
You know, because another universal kind of principle is this idea that whatever you condemn, you're going to breed, attract, or become. You know,
I totally see that, which is also what you have talked about a lot with this idea of polarization. So the stronger a belief one way, the stronger the universe will bring in the challenge to make you balance out that perception.
Yes, absolutely. Because you can't stay that way. Like it's your intuition is always trying to reveal to you the other side, and that will be happening through feedback from the people around you, through feedback in symptoms in your body. There'll be so many different things at play to try and bring you back.
Or even synchronicity, so what you notice in your world around you.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So the other thing I wanted to kind of pinpoint with perception is I always talk about this story of the idea, because we talk a lot about values, and each person has their own set of things that are really important to them. And because those things are integral to how they live a nourished, wholesome life, there can be this perception of, well, that's what everybody else needs to live a wholesome, nourishing life. But in fact, it's perfect for you, and the person next to you may have the polar opposite, but equally as perfect and nourishing set of beliefs for them that come from what they most value in life. So that's why we do so much work on values. Values then underpin how we view what is happening and what we notice in our world around us. So we could, all of us, all of you listeners, Bridget and I could both in that same moment witness a car crash. And every single one of us would perceive what had happened differently. Every single one of us would take different messages and meaning out of that same exact experience that happened. Of course, in reality, only happen one way. But because we all have our own woundings, beliefs, and filters and how we see our reality, we all are going to see what happened and what the learnings are out of it differently. So this is the concept of what we perceive. So I'm hoping that really makes sense to our listeners when we think about reality is always happening, but each of us are seeing and taking meaning out of it in completely different ways based on our story.
Absolutely.
Which is perfect.
It is, and this is what helps us to grow, right? Like, you know, you can't not perceive the things that are important to you because they're what guide you. And there's a lot of kind of stuff around there, and we all feel this. This is because it's intrinsically imprinted in us in humans to want to grow and to achieve fulfillment in every area of life. So we're always going to be seeking some form of purpose to fulfill those things. But we are never not on purpose because our set of values are dictating our purpose for that point in time. And those values will shift and change. So our core values will stay the same, but the outward expression of what those look like will change.
Can you give an example to really break that apart
Sure.
a bit more?
So I'll give my own example. So if I perceive that I am having, for example, a couple of years ago, fertility challenges, then I would look at, you know, I would latch on to whatever it was that I thought would help me clear those. And so for a long time it was food, it was cutting out chemicals, things like that.
Man, when I went to you were a hard ass on that
I
stuff.
know, I really was hard ass,
And I was
right?
this naturopath, 10 years down the track.
Yeah.
Third child who met you, and I'm like, oh, love.
Yeah, really. And because for me at that point, I couldn't see anything
Yes,
else that was
I
going to get me
know.
out of that. So that's
I know.
where my head was at.
Yes.
And then through...
Which is perfect, right? So this is the whole thing of wherever we're at is still perfect because we are still in those moments taking the learnings and the gifts out of that journey.
And the key is we perceive what we need to perceive in order to grow. So that was what I was needing to perceive at that point in order to grow through that quantum, shall we say, that like quantum that we climb each time we break an illusion.
Yes. So there's no mistakes, right? Because we can look back sometimes and go, oh my God, I can't believe you thought that or did that.
Yeah.
But in actual fact, it's a perfect piece of the puzzle to where you are and who you are now.
Yeah. So for a long time, that sort of ran me. Because that was largely pretty polarized at one point, I would be getting challenged from people around me. So my son might not want to eat some of the stuff I made. My husband wasn't kind of towing the line as much. I'd be going out to restaurants and having my buttons pushed all the time because of like what I didn't want to eat, right? And all those things are, kind of in my perception, I now see were trying to get me back into some form of balance.
Isn't that interesting? But in the moment, you're like, all these things are wrong.
Yeah.
Because I'm right.
And I was on my soapbox, right?
Yeah.
Because I was right and I had done the reading and I knew.
Yeah, this is the strong polarization. There isn't the strong perception,
Yeah.
which is fascinating. I really totally love that story that you've highlighted, that your whole world around you, which is really your subconscious trying to get you to take notice of where to balance yourself, where to equilibrate.
Because if you don't self-govern, i.e. if you don't see that balance for yourself, you will attract outward governance by the universe around you to help you get back into governance.
Love it. So let's talk about that then. Let's move forward. So how do you come into self-governance?
So self-governance is really around, it's a tricky one because sometimes when we get too much into emotion, it's very, very difficult to self-govern. So when we get into particular polarizing emotions like, unsustainable happiness or, depression or sadness or anger, like, those kinds of feelings in our bodies, we're often more likely to act on impulse, and we're less we're very much chasing instant gratification. And that's kind of a feedback to go, okay, what's going on here? Like, I'm not making sound decisions here. I'm just kind of leaping into stuff. And so it's really around asking yourself questions, what's going on for me right now? Is this really what I value, or is this what I think I should be doing? Because often when you are living out those kinds of polarizations, you can very quickly become subordinating to kind of other authorities. Like if, for example, it's food and chemicals and stuff like that, it could be certain wellness authorities that you've held up as right. So you're living out that dogma, which is kind of serves a purpose for where you think you need to go, but it's also means that you're perhaps spending way more money than you normally would on something and you're just a little bit kind of flighty. That's kind of a good feedback to sort of get back to, okay, is that a wise choice or am I just making that on impulse?
Well, we all know when we're living in emotion, don't we? I mean, we've talked about it in terms of triggers.
Yeah.
So look back on those podcasts because there's so many ways to actually break down an emotional charge, and there's like 1,000 ways you could take the learnings out of it, right?
Yeah.
So you could delve back into your childhood. You could peel apart the mirror of what it's offering for you right now. Like there's so many things you could do to pull that well, I'm going to say genius out of that situation,
Yeah.
because either you or your universe has created that for you right there.
Yeah. And this comes from the concept that so much of our behaviours and patterns and ways of being are imprinted at a young age, and we are continually playing those out until we love them. So whatever you don't love, it will kind of run you until you love it. So, you know, we see this in relationships, for example. So you have the woman who, you know, continually attracts the same kind of man. And that's because she hasn't yet loved what he was trying to teach her, what that relationship was trying to teach her. So you keep recreating the same situations to learn the lesson.
And this is what I really love too, and what I really struggle with a lot of New Age philosophy is this concept of owning and disowning. We talk a lot about, there's these vague kind of universal concepts around self-love and, you know, universal love and la la la.
Yeah.
But then we're in these beautiful spaces, and I'm sure many of our listeners have been in them with, you know, our gorgeous hippie friends or wherever we are, and we can't be angry, and we're not allowed to be, you know, X, Y, and Z, whatever it is that's unacceptable to you in terms of your parenting, your behaviour, your career, whatever it is. Whatever is unacceptable to you is what you're trying to disown.
Yeah.
But the universe is always going to get you to try to own it, because there are gifts even in the hard, shitty stuff that you are judging as imperfect.
And I think that comes too from this, you know, Wayne Dyer-esque kind of spirituality, which says, or Eckhart Tolle, you know, where, yes, okay, a lot of the principles they say are true, but we are also human, right? We also have human emotions that need to be expressed. And the more you try and repress things like anger,
the more they come back
they
to bite
will
you.
just explode. And
Yeah,
or
and they
you'll
do.
create physical symptoms because it's not healthy to continually repress.
It's always coming out.
Yeah.
So this is what you're saying when you're feeling a huge emotional reaction or trigger, or like you've just hit on, if you are sick, injured or sore within your body, both of those create the opportunity for you to self-govern, right? Which comes full circle back to these set of quality questions that you ask yourself in these moments, in connection with that pain or feeling. What is this actually trying to reveal to me right now? What am I trying to hide or see? What am I trying to own more of? Where am I headed here? Like, it's these particular questions.
Yeah. And also trying, as much as you can, trying to get back to the original source of it, which can be quite difficult because a lot of the time it's marred by a lot of pain, you know. So, and we obviously do a lot to try and not go there. But whatever we're experiencing is that, you know.
And I love that you've often said to me, we never don't remember though, right? So
we know.
We know everything. Even if we think we haven't got a conscious memory of when that first whatever wounding happened, we do know at some level. And I'm not going to name names or anything, but in our retreat we had this beautiful woman who had exactly that experience. So we were peeling back these layers and we came to this one belief, and I said to her, when did you learn this belief?
Yeah.
And she went, well, I've got no idea. I don't know. I've no idea. And then she had a kinesiology body therapy that we had there, and she ran out of the room and she came back in tears and she said, I just had a very vivid memory of when I learned the thing that you just said.
So beautiful.
Oh my God.
And it was perfect because she had through the retreat, she had got her intuition to the point enough that it was able to pop through.
Exactly.
Because a lot of these memories don't pop up unless we're in tune with our intuition.
Yes.
And I mean, like, a lot of John D. Martini's stuff, like, he will hammer people and he will continue to ask the question. He's like, no, I know you know, because you can't not know.
Yeah, so he just keeps asking.
And the stuff that comes up is, like, mind-blowing.
Yes.
Because, you know, you can actually be taken back to the womb because you have memories even in the womb.
It's crazy, isn't it?
But we can't go there because we block it out most of the time. And children are amazing because you can take, like, young children can tell you a lot of what's happened until they forget, you know, in inverted commas.
Yeah.
It's really powerful stuff.
It's really powerful. Okay, we need to come back to creation of your reality. So we've looked at values that underpin the filter or the perception, the way that we view the world, synchronicity through those filters, and we've looked at quality questions to try and understand this concept of we're constantly trying to equilibrate a situation. So that's what we were saying. So if we are not consciously doing that for ourselves, asking the quality questions, trying to equilibrate our huge emotional charges in a moment, we build bigger and bigger feelings or polarizations about what something is right and what something is wrong.
Yeah.
And then the universe does it for us.
Yes. And it might be in the form of a person. So somebody will challenge it, you know, and start to unravel but why do you think like that? Oh, and why can't you do that? And if you start to feel those emotions or those kinds of
Well, they won't be so
fears.
nice about it. They'll just be doing the exact opposite right in front of you.
Yeah. Yeah. Or they'll have some kind of cataclysmic event that will make you own that.
Yes.
Which serves right,
Yes.
but it's not.
So which is the challenge with the feather,
Yeah.
the hammer, or, you know,
Or the
what
brick.
is it? What did I say? Feather, brick, sledgehammer. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
and that comes back to self-governance, right? So you either govern yourself or you'll attract outward governance.
Yes.
And, you know, these things come in the forms of some people who get massive addictions will attract a massive cataclysmic event to break an addiction, for example, because an addiction is an incredible polarization of a habit that you've formed that you cannot simply get yourself out of anymore. That you're, you know, basically attached to.
The next universal principle I really want to delve into, Bridget, is based on perception. So we're building up to the point of where we create our universe. We're just trying to lay the foundations for that. Is there is no right or wrong, and this is this concept of trying to equilibrate what you're perceiving, because we're only viewing something as right or wrong when we're polarized.
Yeah.
Because really, if we kind of went universally a little bit higher mind than that, we can see the perfection in how that plays out.
Yeah.
And I have seen this, and I'm sure you as our listener have seen this when you start to look at those people around you, how whatever has happened to them in their childhood or in their lives in some way has formed what they needed to do the job when they're older.
Yeah. And this is called the law of polarity. So it's that idea of you're always going to have two poles of something, and your values will guide you. Your values, your experiences, your conditioning will guide you to see a certain one as preferable.
Which is actually genius, right? Because none of us, all of us have a different, you know, belief system and something we're passionate about and genius that we bring to the table.
Yes.
And so it would be no point all of us having exactly the same life experience, because we would have all of the same people doing all of this. And we need the people that love the planet, and the people that love the animals, and the people that love the mothers, and the people that love healthcare. I don't know, because we need everybody's genius in all of that. But all of those are formed based on what's happened previously for you that's led you with almost like a driving, guiding post to get there because you believe in it so deeply.
And this comes from this concept of voids. So Aristotle, the philosopher, talked about this idea of voids driving values. So your perception, often created when you're very young, of something missing will drive your values for the rest of your life. And you'll be constantly changing what the outer form of those values look like, but it'll be filling this sense of something missing. So I find it fascinating to talk to people.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, recently we had a Suburban Sandcastles event with this guy who's kind of amazing. Like, he's done so much incredible stuff, David Martin, and I spent 4 hours with him the other day. And anyone who's doing anything particularly interesting, or just anyone generally who has a particular firm viewpoint, I always want to know what the void is.
I know, because there's always going to be,
Yeah,
right? And
there's always going to be there.
Because that's the story, it's the juice of their life.
And you can start to see it. So for him, just digging deeper, I understood that he grew up with incredibly fundamentalist religious parents. So they were kind of Bible Belt Americans. This is right, this is wrong. Incredible black and white thinking, which he just never understood, and he felt incredibly repressed in. And so for him now, he won't conform. So not only has he got completely opposite views to them, he's very libertarian, he's very...
But let's just take it back to basics of what that would have been like. So when you can start to see it in your world right now.
Yes, that's right. Because now...
Parents who did not think their child was acceptable, who would have punished and tried to create a child to morph into what they believed was the right way to live, and to disown what they believed was the wrong way to live. So you even said to me he'd got to the point where his family had cast him out, saying he was, you know...
Evil. Yeah, they cast him out. And so that's exactly right. So at the moment, like a lot of parents now, we're kind of conscious to not want to dim our child's spirit. We're conscious of not wanting to tame that kind of
wildishness.
But in fact, sometimes for the kids who are shut down that much,
it creates a massive yearning to want to
Massive.
create the opposite
Yes.
in their adult life. And how perfect is that, right?
yeah, so
Yes.
it comes back to this idea. It's really disconcerting as a parent because you might think you've got your shit together and you're doing it right, but you don't know what...
But are you?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because for this guy, like, you know, we know that, like, this kinds of immense challenge as a child often breeds precocious independence. It breeds entrepreneurs. It breeds
Yes.
people who change the world because they haven't had the safety that a lot
Yes.
of other children have had growing up.
Which is fascinating because there's some ridiculous figure, like 98% of all entrepreneurs came from a challenging background.
Like Oprah, like there's so many ones who had
Yes.
incredible, you know, hardships.
Yes.
And it can go two ways because sometimes people never get out of those hardships, and that's some kind of subconscious choice they're making, that they continue to run the story. But other ones use it as a powerful fuel. Yeah, it's just fascinating. So it starts to, you know, as soon as you're judging another parent around you. Like,
And that's where I've totally changed, because now I look at all of these, which you guys would be the same. You have a variety of parenting styles, you know, right in your face, right around you in your community. And, you know, back when I started as a parent, I was so full on in attachment that any other version was so deeply wounding for that child that there was a huge polarization and judgment that I then placed on those people around me. Come full circle now. And now I look at those women who are choosing a very different parenting path, or who might smack, who might yell, who might do all of these things that part of me goes, oh, that seems so, like, damaging.
yeah.
But if I take just a moment to step back and go, but what is that creating in that child that leads them on to doing what with their life?
Yeah. And that's the thing, like, as soon as we're judging it, this concept, as soon as we're judging it, we're kind of wrong because we're not seeing
So what
balance
is right
to
or
it.
wrong, right? Because
Yeah.
even when I'm thinking something's right, I'll be missing a piece of that puzzle. And perhaps in some ways I might even be, you know, capping my kids off by offering too much support because there's not enough challenge for them to actually define a huge sense of self, or an enormous enough void that creates a huge driver in an adult.
Yeah.
Or the things that I think I'm fucking up maybe are actually perfect.
Yeah.
Because what is the resilience or the learnings or the belief systems they form out of that that they go on to create something extraordinary? So what is right and what is wrong? This is perception, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And this is when we start to look at, when we're really taking it back to a universal level as opposed to an in-the-moment human experience. So I'm hoping you can start to look at your stories around you and maybe start to pull that apart a little bit.
And it's just simply starting with some questions. Oh, okay, what am I not seeing here? Oh, that's interesting that I feel so strongly about that. And that's also a nice feedback to what your own values are. Because if you try too hard to disown your own values, because we are driven to grow based on our own unique set of values, then you'll get feedback on that too. It's okay to choose to do it your way, but it's doing it your way with an awareness that your way might not necessarily be right, but it's simply your own expression of yourself and your own path. And there's a lot less, I think, when you can choose to do it that way, knowing that you might not be right, but it's true for you, there's a lot less angst in it, because you're not feeling like you're having to prove that you're right.
And also I think it takes away the pressure of being attached to an outcome. I often think we, particularly in the natural parenting, attachment parenting communities, we start way back when our kids are little and we go, but if I do this now, they'll end up like that.
Yeah.
Or we'll end up with this type of relationship.
Yeah, and that's absolutely where so many people start. But once you start to unpack it a bit, you realise there's no guarantees.
No, there's really not. So let's really bring this back, Bridget, because I really want to now start to pull apart this concept of we are the creators of our reality. So hopefully we've laid the foundations for you on what perception is and what balancing looks like in your world that's constantly changing what your future or your current reality is. So based on where we've come from, with the stories that we have, viewing the world through the filters that we have, with the voids that we have that change where we're going and what we want out of this world, changes what we call into our future.
Yeah. And it's also being aware too that whatever we bury or whatever we don't kind of equilibrate, which is a lot of the time, will go into our subconscious. And so all symptoms and diseases and stuff come from our subconscious because they're asking to be, you know, understood, basically. And so sometimes we will subconsciously create an event that consciously there's no way we want this. Why is this happening? But it's because there is lessons for us in that, which can be incredibly challenging to get your head around and to understand. But this is that idea of, you know, people who go through enormous challenge go back and look, you know, in hindsight, and hindsight might take a long time to see, but often there was enormous learnings for them, even though those learnings might have been painful. And we can't avoid that. It doesn't matter how connected, aware, awake you might feel that you are. Life will still, through our own governance and lack of governance, give us those things to learn from. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. So when we're talking about how we can start to consciously create our future, how would you say we start to go about that?
Getting really clear on your own values, which is something that we do in our retreats and what we're going to be doing when we launch the online program. That's
because
probably...
the more you can live in strong alignment with your own, the less it's a foggy result, because you're trying to figure out all of the shoulding and the should nots based on other people's beliefs and values, not your own true guiding light.
Yeah, because if you imagine like a line, like if you imagine kind of like a line and an even straight line between you now and your purpose, it's never going to be even, right? Because the reality is that we're often governing ourselves by what the outer world thinks we should do. So, you know, you've kind of got dips and like cracks in the bottom, and you've got big hills, and then you've got like massive kind of diving deep, you know, this massive squiggly line that's trying to get you to where you want to go. The more that you can get clear on your own true values, and the more that you can continue to ask yourself questions, whether it's through meditation, whether it's through just like loving presence with yourself, you'll awaken your intuition to understand what it is that's true for you. And then you can govern yourself more by your inner world rather than the outer world's opinions. Because that's, you know, all of the great geniuses over time were often really misunderstood by the people around them. But because they had such a strong sense of their own internal mission and wisdom, they didn't kind of waver when they were kind of massively judged, or, you know, and of course that's part of themselves, judging themselves, but that they still knew that the path for them, while it was going to have challenge, was their own inspired path. Which can be really hard to start to say, yes, that's your opinion, but I'm not taking that on board. Yes, I hear what you're saying, but this is true for me. Those things take practice. But I know John D. Martini says this, you know, I'd rather the whole world against me than my own soul. Because your own soul is trying to guide you. It's just how much you're willing to listen.
Yeah, I really agree with that. And I also think there is a bit of, you know, to really start to create a reality that you want to be different to what is currently happening for you. So whatever you perceive as not quite right now, or that you would like to see change in, it's about starting to awaken. Well, one, looking universally, like you've talked about in the Family Dynamics podcast, where am I that, where am I not that? Looking at the mirrors of the people and the interactions that you're starting to have around you. So it's starting to bring a huge amount of consciousness to what is the story that it's trying to peel back for me. So that you can start to self-govern and start to move forwards in creating where you want to see those energies, I suppose, channeled into the change you want to see, as opposed to it kind of this fluid, it's happening everywhere because you have no control over it.
And also it's really, really wise to love the situation you're in before you go and change it.
Yes, gratitude.
Because otherwise you'll just recreate it. It's like that idea of, I hate my boss, I hate my job, it's really just crap, like, you know, I'm just going to leave. Well, you're just going to create it again, because you haven't learned the lessons yet that that's trying to teach you about yourself. Sure, go leave, but find gratitude first and learn to love the situation that you're in. It's the same thing with relationships, with anything in life. What you run from will run you. Yeah.
So what have I got out of it? How has it served me? How is it serving me? How does it serve my highest values? Who is in my life now that otherwise wouldn't be? You know, these set of questions.
And the mirror too. I mean, where do I do that? Like that thing that thing that my boss does.
That thing that I really hate.
Yeah. Where do I do that?
Where do I do that? Yes, self-ownership, absolutely. Yeah. So the concept of being able to create your future is really just this universal concept of starting to peel apart your current reality, which creates further clarity till you get to kind of this crystal clear version where you can almost start to perceive and create change in the areas you want to see them, because you've gotten clear on what's actually happening or what your soul's guiding you into now.
And, you know, we talked about affirmations and, you know, how to manifest, and the law of attraction is a great example. So you could do things like vision boards. Another thing you can do is like a love list. So what do I want to be, do and have in every area of life? So in my family life, who do I want to be? What things do I want to do in my family life, and what do I want to have? And those kinds of be your guiding missions, and that having these things, you know, that you create when you're present and grateful and feeling aligned in your life, and really great to go back to when you're feeling really wishy-washy and kind of don't know where you're going, because some part of you, when you were present, created this map for yourself of what you wanted to fulfill.
And if you're not being conscious around what's going on, the universe or your body through the universe will start to create the blockages.
Yeah.
So, the broken foot, the sore leg,
Yeah.
like
You're
me,
talking about yourself.
I'm totally talking about myself. The sore shoulder that prevents you from doing exercise or whatever.
Yeah, conveniently.
I'm creating that.
Yeah.
It's not just, oh, poor me, I can't exercise, this is terrible for my life, and living in my story and my wounding.
Yeah.
It's, why have I created this within my body? What have I not listened to
Yeah.
that now it's become from an emotional to a physical manifestation, because it's gone deeper,
Yep.
because I haven't seen it and I haven't learned from it yet. So what is that teaching me? Because if I'm not being conscious enough of what's happening around me, the challenge will increase until I notice it.
Yes. And I think also we need to point out here too that it's an illusion, like, that we run as humans, that you can have health without disease. Like, we know homeostasis is the principle of getting the body back into balance.
Yes.
And so you can't have one without the other, and there will always be symptoms that are being expressed and symptoms that we're repressing.
Can't have health without sickness.
Yes. So you'll always have something, but it's when you're actually noticing a symptom in your body, it comes into your awareness for a reason.
Right, but this is awareness in general. This can be awareness of something. Well, I think particularly when you've created a physical manifestation, though, that's a whole nother level to just witnessing, becoming aware of something around you. So when you're aware of anything around you, that's you talking to you, trying to get you to notice something. So let's just point out, if you have a strong connection, awareness, or, noticing of someone, something, an event, an emotion around you, you are trying to get you to notice it for a reason.
Yeah, yeah.
But if that has gone beyond an emotional shutdown, disconnection, disowning, whatever, and now it's in your body, you're really working hard to get you to own it.
Yeah.
So there's total wisdom and beauty there. Because when you really get into that, you can totally change and consciously create the future that you want in the areas of inspiration. So it's not that you're going to be challenge free, but it's that you can really, like you say, Bridget, pick the challenges in the areas that you feel inspired and juiced up by, rather than them vicariously kind of sideswiping you because you've been unaware of everything that's happening around you.
Yeah, that's it. Choosing your own inspired challenges as opposed to the icky ones that you're going to get given otherwise. It's like, govern your own life, or life will govern you. Yeah,
totally. So I really hope that you've got something out of this podcast that starts to create awareness around you, but a starting of the underlying principles of universal laws and how they're constantly impacting the way that we function, the way that you function, and how to start to, I suppose, design the future that you really are yearning for.
Yeah. That inspires you.
With your genius.
And is there any particular areas that you felt like you didn't fully comprehend, or that you want us to go back to, or that you want us to expand more on? Like, please let us know as well, because there is we're well aware that there is so much in this.
Yes.
And that we're...
And that sometimes we don't break it down into steps far enough. So if you really do need to know more, please let us know so that we can answer that for you. Because it won't just be you. No. I'm sure there'll be many listeners who are feeling the same.
Yes, exactly.
So to connect with you, Bridget.
Yes, suburbansandcastles.com. And our upcoming film is in May, and that's called Polyfaces. It's looking at kind of different way of farming, so to get back to nature and to get back to working with the environment. And so it's quite beautiful, actually, the film. So that's coming up then. And you, Julie?
Is thepleasurenutritionist.com. And us, Bridget, is at the moment, is our website up?
Our website's up, so www.nourishingthemother.com.au. So we've just got kind of a cover screen up at the moment, but
we're working on the rest of
but
it.
You can register to join our tribe there, which would be great, because we're sending out lots of emails and just kind of hopefully hitting you where you need to be connected and awakened.
Yes.
So that's kind of evolving, and soon we'll be launching our first online program, which is really exciting.
It is really exciting. So please rate us on iTunes. Please share any of our posts or podcasts that are really resonating with you, even if that's just a link via a text message to a friend. It really does help us kind of know where you want us to take this, and also that it does help us stay on iTunes and certainly on the Wellness Couch too. So please jump on our tribe. We
Yes.
love the communication and the
We really love
interaction.
it.
We
We really
love
do.
seeing the ripples happening out in your life. And we feel a huge amount of humility and gratitude just for the ability to be here, I suppose,
Yeah,
isn't
absolutely. That's it.
And
So until next
yes.
week, when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/The Wellness Couch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.